Lunch and Learn. My name is Lauren, and I just want to thank everyone for spending their lunch hour if you're with us on the East Coast, or their coffee hour if you guys are our West Coast friends. Today, we are going to be talking all things marketing in a pandemic. Our EVP of Marketing, Mohammed Yassin, is going to be interviewing Liv Gabrielsen, who is Bainbridge's Director of Marketing, and Scott Papenfus, who is LCP 360's Director of Strategic Partnership. During this webinar, there's going to be a couple different ways for you guys to interact with us. There are going to be poll questions you guys can answer, Q&A that you guys can pop into the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, or we can communicate through chat. So please be interactive. All of your questions will either be answered during the session or post-session during the last 10 minutes. Lastly, you guys will hear about 40 minutes of Q&A with Mohammed, Liv, and Scott, and then we will wrap it up at the end with Q&A. So without further ado, Mohammed, if you want to kick us off.
Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate that, and thanks everybody for popping in. I'm seeing a lot of names in the room there that I've seen multiple times. So welcome back if you were here before, and also if you were one of those first 20 people to register for the webinar. I hope you are enjoying your Grubhub gift card and hopefully having either some lunch or maybe an early brunch or possibly even a late breakfast on us. So appreciate you coming in. Thanks. Really excited to be chatting with Liv. It's been a while since we talked, like pre-pandemic. So really good to see your face again. Scott, we just met the other day, but right before we got on, we realized that we grew up, 10 miles away from each other?
Yeah.
Which is pretty amazing. So thanks and welcome. Appreciate this. This is kind of one of my, soapbox topics, clearly marketing. That's my jam. So excited to be chatting about that today. From a couple of different perspectives. And before we get started with kind of a kickoff question, let's pop up the first poll question. I want to get a little bit of customer or kind of audience feedback in here. This is really about how things are going for you from a marketing perspective. Just an easy yes or no. Did you have to shift your marketing, right? In any way. So we're going to leave that up on the side there while we start with our first kind of chit chat question, which is, what major shifts from a prospect perspective have you seen in behavior this year? Clearly, it's easy to talk about just the marketing, right? But the reason that a lot of us have had to move marketing has been because consumer behavior has changed, right? Part of that is the fact that, as we were talking about before we got on here, we're in many cases stuck in the house or not going out as much as maybe we were before. So that gets rid of a lot of things like casual stop buys for me at Target, for example, right? I'm doing a lot more online shopping. We're also seeing a lot more online behaviors when it comes to apartment research as well. What are the big shifts that you've kind of seen? And we'll kind of start with Liv here, kind of right there on the ground. And then we're going to go to Scott after that, because you've got kind of a broad view of lots of different properties and property management groups even that you guys are working with that you're kind of seeing things through. So we'll go with you, Liv, and we'll start there. Sure. What are you seeing new?
I think you kind of, started hitting on it. We've seen a huge shift in consumer behavior to embrace all things digital. So we knew that was the trend. I mean, you hear in other industries where big box stores are closing down because all sales are digital. We've even seen like big ticket items being purchased online, like automotive. So I think for multifamily, what it did is it just kind of forced, our industry to embrace all things digital. And we saw, obviously, stay-at-home orders and, the COVID pandemic really made us shift what we're doing to ensure that we can meet the consumer demands in a 100% digital environment. So it was more of, we knew it was there, we knew it was coming, and it was just embracing and adapting to that big change of everything has to be done, from their computer and in a digital way.
Exactly. It's interesting that you brought up those, like, we knew some of this was coming, right? We've known this for years. It's been moving this direction. But I think it was still a little bit of a shock of sorts of how fast we had to lean into maybe some of the things that we were already thinking about or behaviors that we had already seen that suddenly, over the course of a couple of weeks went from, yeah, we're going that way to no, this is it, right?
Right. Well, yeah, and I think for multifamily, a big part of it for us is, we want that face-to-face interaction because, for our communities, it's more than just the four walls, that they live in. It's really just
Yes.
the community and the environment and the lifestyle. And so how do we communicate that in a digital way when we are removing these on-site visits? So that was, the challenge for us and something that we knew we had to do to give a full picture of what it's like, to live in a Bainbridge community.
Right, right. And we're going to dig a little bit more into that, right, as we kind of continue on in this conversation into, what are you doing from a marketing side to adjust to that, right? What does channel mix look like? What does ROI look like? All those sorts of things, which I'm excited about. You can go ahead and pop up the results, Lauren, while we get started with Scott. Scott, from your side, I know you're chatting with lots and lots of different properties across the country. Um, what are some big shifts you're seeing? And I'm also curious about if you're seeing anything, from a regional perspective that maybe slight nuances to that behavior as well.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I think you nailed it. This has been coming for a long time. So I look at this as just we hit the accelerator, and suddenly, what people were investigating, what they were starting to explore, now they absolutely have to have it, and everybody has to have it in a rush. And so, obviously, it made our business inquiries jump dramatically. And, I think that I made this comparison the other day when we were talking that, there was a time when everybody didn't even have a website. And, then people had websites that were, just a business card. And then people started putting still photos. And it's just the natural evolution. And obviously, we focus a great deal on virtual tours. We do 3D renderings. So at some point, those are going to be the norm as well. You can't just have photos. You can't, have a single type of media. I think what we're seeing is people want, an integrated experience, and they want something that's interactive as well. And so I think there's a place for virtual tours. There's a place for video. All that going into an integrated experience. That's what I'm hearing more of than anything is, you have to look at it from the end user, and, they're looking for a smooth experience from start to finish. And, now that you definitely can't always go on site, we're seeing more and more people look at how do I meld all these technologies together to make a seamless user experience.
That's a really interesting perspective on that, right? I think that, one of the byproducts, and we've seen this in a couple of other industries as well, right, is there's always that progression, right? If I think back to, straight out of school, my first car and my first apartment were both found by me picking up the little magazine thing at the checkout lane on my way out the grocery store, right, and flipping through it and circling things. Then that definitely moved into more static, as you call, business card types of websites with basic contact information, and started getting more and more involved. And then we see in multiple industries where they then start adding tools on top of that, right? Conversion tools, engagement tools, flip books, all these kind of things. And then you hit this saturation point where suddenly you realize you have all this stuff on your website. And I deal with this as well, right? For myself. And you realize, oh my gosh, none of these things are talking to each other. My tech stack suddenly got really huge, buying all these cool tools over the past couple of years. But like, what's my real strategy behind this, and how are they interacting with like my database? How am I actually like enabling my people to use all this information, et cetera? So that was a really good point about kind of like the integration that I feel like is definitely all this is pushing the industry forward a little bit on making sure our tools are talking to each other.
Right.
Even across vendors, right? We all got to play nice together if we're gonna provide the appropriate value to not only folks on site, but even to the consumers themselves trying to search for things just to make it easier for them. Kind of leaning into that a little bit, we've talked about some of the major like high level shifts and the fact that we were already going in this direction, right? And I think we all agree on that. I know Liv and I have many conversations. I know how she feels about technology in general. I know she's very focused on that. Clearly, you, Scott, being at a technology company, feel the same, right? I would hope.
Yes.
So we were kind of going in this direction, and it did accelerate. But were there any like major shifts or major pivots that happened inside of, you know, the last couple of months that kind of took you by surprise, either in how fast they moved or in areas where you just weren't expecting it to be that big, as big of a deal as it is now? And we'll let you continue on that, Scott, before we go back to Liv.
Well, I mean, certainly there's a few areas that come to mind. And again, I'm going to speak to our virtual tours because that's what I know best. But you know, one of the key things that we've seen is obviously we saw a huge jump in the analytics side. So, you know, the analytics were already great for virtual tours, but you can literally look at a graph and just see this huge spike. I mean, 10x, 20x when the pandemic hit. And, you know, one of the key things that we're seeing is more and more people on site are using our guided virtual tour or a mirrored virtual tour. And, you know, I think that kind of brings together the two worlds. Virtual tour is fantastic and it's great when somebody's looking and, you know, it's interactive. But the fact that you can actually have a, you know, person on site take control of that virtual tour and walk somebody through, because I mean, we all know that, you know, somebody on site is always the best resource. They know the talking points. They know what's great about the neighborhood. They know what's great about, you know, the fitness center, whatever the key points are in that community. And so that technology, I think, has taken off a great deal. We've had that built in, but the usage has really jumped because people want to still have that leasing agent interaction, you know, that on-site person to walk them through the virtual tour. So you've got both avenues, but that's where I've really seen an uptick in interest is people wanting to perform kind of a hybrid of it's a virtual tour, but it's actually being led by somebody on site.
Gotcha. That makes sense. What about, so Liv, you also kind of transitioned a little bit around the same time as pandemic. You got experience, you know, not only on the vendor side, but also on the on-site side. You kind of have a, you know, a role, kind of seeing a lot of marketing over there at Bainbridge as well. What surprised you?
So, you know, obviously to, you know, to piggyback off Scott, the use of video and virtual tours, that was a big shift. But I think another thing that surprised me was like the rise of social media. Specifically organically, I think in the past for multifamily, social media was more of, you know, creating a brand awareness from a, you know, a prospect side, and obviously engagement with existing residents. We started seeing an increase in traffic to our website from the community's organic postings. So that was eye-opening for us, and that enabled us to kind of come to the realization that we are sitting on, you know, a channel of marketing that we could really capitalize on. And so we had to really identify, okay, we have two audiences here. We have to create content and messaging for our residents to continue that, you know, community feel and that we're there for them. But then we also realized, wait a second, we have prospects that are checking us out on, you know, social media. So then it allowed us to kind of reallocate some marketing dollars to social ads. We started implementing social ads, you know, diversifying our content in what we post. That's for a resident, content that we post that's for a prospect. And that's, you know, Scott, to your point, where like tools like video and our postings were really impactful and effective. And that to me has just been the biggest surprise. We are not only seeing traffic to our website, but we're also seeing leads coming through Facebook Messenger. We're seeing leads coming through our Instagram, you know, DMs. And that, yeah, so that's been something that surprised me and something that we've really capitalized on.
That's really interesting. Those are definitely ones I think for a lot of folks we look at as brand tools, right? And maybe to some extent, kind of customer service tools in a way as well when you start thinking
Sure.
about DMs, but certainly not expecting to have prospects coming through a direct message on Instagram asking to come check things out.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And even we're even getting like ask a question through Google My Business and
Oh, wow.
through Yelp. And so again, things that we normally did not see, we are seeing, come in. And so obviously that's made us really focus on, our listings and what they look like and making sure that we're not just focusing on great content on our website and our, ILS partners and, our Facebook, but in these listings where people are searching, because at the end of the day, whatever channel and medium, they're looking to find a community. Bainbridge wants to be there. And, we want
Absolutely.
to provide them the most information available.
Let's lean a little bit more into that one because I know like content marketing as a whole is one of those areas that a lot of communities they don't spend a lot of time on as like a key marketing strategy, right? May have a little bit of content, see maybe a lot of places that may hire maybe a vendor to post some blogs here or there around some different amenities and that sort of thing around the property. But Bainbridge really, from my perspective, watching you all, you're noticeably different about how you approach content marketing. You're really serious about it, right? You've been leaning into it for a long time. And you're really like kind of different in that regard. Why that approach? Like why you've explained a little bit about right now in this environment, right? And I want to chat about like kind of tweaks you maybe had to make as a result of that. But why is that so much intentional effort put into content marketing in relation to your properties?
I mean, I think by definition, right, content marketing is what you're utilized to engage with your consumers to have them learn about your business. So by definition alone, the engagement piece has to be what sticks out, and the
Mm-hmm.
consumer piece that needs to be what sticks out, right? So, and for us, we want to understand the consumer trends, consumer expectations, consumer demands, and then we got to take those consumers and we need to understand like, okay, what does our audience look like? Because for us, obviously generating prospects and leads is very important, but the retention piece is also very important to us,
Right.
and how we communicate to our residents. And then all in all, just the Bainbridge brand is important to us. So we're looking at 3 different categories, if you will, and how do we fill those 3 different categories with different messaging, because I can't send the same, I can't just focus on one category and send reoccurring messaging, because then I'm losing engagement with 2 other potential groups of consumers. And so we understand that. And so we, in order to successfully execute, content marketing strategies, you have to put thought into it. And so we do things like, obviously, making sure that we provide as much content and information about our communities to prospects, but also include what it's our customer service, include what the lifestyle is, include the neighborhood. So content around this is the neighborhood and here's some local shops and we're walking distance to this great coffee shop, even though right now it's not as relevant, but it will be eventually, right? And it was in the past. So we want to share, this is our beautiful community, this is the beautiful apartment home, but also check out our awesome team. And so we have like fun videos and, virtual events that we do. And then for our residents, we want to make sure that, we are showing them the love and attention and care that's part of Bainbridge's customer service and keeping them engaged and informed. And then for our brand and just from like a corporate standpoint, we highlight a lot of the great things that our on-site team members do. We highlight new projects that we're working on. So if we're trying to do that, the content and the messaging has to be diverse and, it has to be varied.
That makes a lot of sense. It feels very much, about really adding in that component of community and family and all those sorts of things. And, for many of us, not that social media wasn't a big part of our lives already, but in this environment. Things like social, things like a Zoom chat, right? Zoom happy hours would have been an absurd concept 9 months ago. I'm not going to sit on the internet and drink with my friends, right? But now all of a sudden it's kind of normalized. It's what we have, is what we adapted to there, and also leaning into some of these social elements as well as how we have our sense of community, right? Which is a bigger, I think, human thing. You mentioned a little bit about video in there as well, and I want to kind of go to Scott and just your perspective on. I think when we talk about video and video vendors, a lot of times we're really talking, honestly, about prospect video, right? And about generating demand for the property. But what kind of interesting ways have you seen video being used more from a resident retention perspective, right? Kind of looking at it from that angle instead.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, video is always going to be, a key part of any strategy. And, there are going to be people that just want to sit back and watch a video. We have certainly seen, I think, a increase in people wanting to include video in their virtual tours, so that when you hit a hot spot, so maybe it's the clubhouse, and they're showing a video of, a recent event that they had, or, things that highlight what's going on, that build that sense of community. We also have a separate videos tab, so that, you can just kind of integrate all this together and tie your tour with your videos. But I think it's really interesting on the hot spots, because again, typically people want to see, the community areas as well as the model unit. It's important that you have that sense of community. And so what I'm seeing is more people are wanting to tie those hot spots to a video clip. So you're in control of it, but when you're in the clubhouse, you can see a video of events, or you can see a staff video that kind of makes you feel like, you'd be part of the family, or, sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're just events, but an introduction. And I think those work for both prospects and for retention, because a lot of people view these, regardless of if you're in the community or not, because what happens is the virtual tours are typically embedded in the social media of our clients, as well as the website and the ILSs. They even put them, in their email signatures, and certainly they go on their Facebook account, and, so the residents see those and will typically play with them. And so it gives them, an opportunity to see some of the things that were, happening at the property, whether they were there or not, and just engage at a higher level.
That makes a lot of sense. So we've got a couple of good questions. We're going to take one of these from Robert and pull it into kind of a follow-up on the content. So we've talked about like the creation of content, right? And I love, you got a little bit into some of the channels, right? Liv, in our question prior to that. But if we shift to distribution as a whole, right? So you create great content, whether that's written content, photography, video, none of that matters if you can't get it to people, right? It really doesn't matter how great it is. So you chatted, Scott. I love the idea of kind of the hotspot areas around the complex. I can definitely see the idea of how that can be used, not only in a self-guided tour perspective, right, and really valuable, but even if you have amenities open for for your existing residents, them being able to see some of those things happening, and get a feel for it, right? Get a feel for like that larger sense of community if they're not around a lot of people. I really love that idea. Let's talk more about kind of the communication itself. Email's one that comes top of mind to me for sure, right? Email marketing's been one that's been around forever. We know it's been valuable to us, not only mostly from a lead nurture perspective, maybe, right? You get someone in, they're not quite ready, you follow up with them, pull them in. But I'm seeing inboxes starting to get kind of crowded a little bit, right? They kind of died down for a bit, but they're getting crowded again as everyone tries to find new ways to talk to people. One, from an email marketing perspective, what do you see people doing to kind of stand out from the crowd there? And then I think second to that, I want to kind of go into a couple of other channels, specifically doubling down on social media. And that was a question from Robert around like what's been the most prevalent. You mentioned Facebook, you mentioned Instagram, right? But I'd love to chat a little bit more about those and some of the other channels maybe you're seeing out there as primaries. But let's start with email or content as a whole or channels as a whole. What are you seeing working to stand out from the crowd when everyone's trying to talk and we're all online now? And we can start with Liv on that.
So I think that, getting back to the basics, it works a lot of times. We are in this like digital world and everything is like email. Picking up the phone and placing a call, even if, the person might not answer your call. I think that personalization, especially in a time where we aren't having too much face-to-face contact, can really go a long way. And so as opposed to just doing the constant email follow-up, just being different in picking up the phone, calling, making sure that you're, communicating in different ways. But in regards to just the email piece, right? How do you make yourself stand out? Again, going back to the basics and just making sure that you're responding to questions. I think we've become a little bit too accustomed to automation in all of our email responses, that when a prospect wants specific information, we go into a 2-page paragraph about all the features and benefits of our community and feel to really have more conversation. So having your communication be more conversational is an important piece. And then one thing that we are taking note of in email nurturing campaigns is where they are in their process. So the communication for somebody looking to move in 30 days out is very different than your communication for somebody that's looking to move maybe 120 days out, right, or greater. So the messaging and what you're highlighting to them and your sense of urgency, they're different. And I find that sometimes we tend to have we treat leads as a lead and fail to really say, well, this person isn't looking yet. And so diversifying, again, your content is important. So for somebody that's looking 30 days out, you're going to be more direct, asking the specific questions, talking availability, sending a video of that vacant unit. We've done that. We have, videos of the actual units that they can move into.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, as opposed to like one general video of the community, we've broken it down into more specific video content that's more relevant. And then for somebody, the communication for somebody that's looking further down is just to give them a general idea of our community, of our amenities and the neighborhood. And, that's kind of just that there's having different messaging is, I believe, and conversational messaging is what helps you stand out from, a full inbox.
I love that word conversational, right? That's when I'm definitely big on it. It can be hard for, I'd say, trained marketers, right? When you go to school and you learn about marketing, they definitely do not teach you conversational at all, right? They teach you how to write the perfect press release, and it is marketing copy. It's not the way you would talk when you're sitting down and chit chat with someone. I think that conversational piece is a huge component to actually like standing out.
Sure.
For sure. And Scott, so she mentioned a little bit about video and a lot of different like types of video and distribution, and you leaned a little bit into kind of the hotspot areas around the community. But what about like digital distribution of that? And then I do want to swing back around to you, Liv, on the social sites as well after we get done with this question. So what are you seeing as far as best practices there, Scott?
Well, I think, again, embedding this information pretty much in all the channels is what we're seeing. So we're seeing more and more people want to embed virtual tours that, again, encompass the hotspots and the videos in everything from their posts to their email signatures, because you get that interactivity. Obviously, from an email standpoint, personally, we're doing more B2B because we're kind of, on the vendor side, as opposed to the community. But what I'm seeing from, my contacts at the communities is that they are trying to build a sense of community in their emails. So their emails have gotten, kind of what you're saying, more conversational. They've gotten less formal. And I think with everybody isolated, I'm seeing more people doing videos of the staff getting together and, holding up signs or thanking people, or, welcoming them to an upcoming event, and, just trying to build a sense of community, because it's missing right now with everybody being isolated. So I've seen a shift in the video content that I've seen that the communities are using in that manner. So
that makes me really, really happy.
If I can just piggyback off Scott, I think he's 100%. We see that with, our teams. We had Bainbridge does a, on-site team appreciation week, where we are taking a whole week to celebrate, our team members. And we try to focus on fun stuff for them to do. So we asked them to do a carpool karaoke one day. And then we asked them to do TikTok videos. And so the intent was fun and internal, but we posted in our social channels, and that's the content that everybody loved, right? That's what received the most engagement, where we had residents oh, you guys are so funny. And, that creating that sense of community whenever we post things that include our team members, that seems to be what creates the most engagement.
That makes so much sense. It can be kind of, I think, intimidating sometimes for some people who maybe have not been using video in the past, right? To lean into some of these more organic style videos, right? The TikTok one, the carpet PERQ, some of these big ideas that may seem intimidating to pull off. We have a question from Sammy out there in the main chat that's kind of around editing, sending, and creating videos. We've talked a lot about distributing them, right? Email, social media. I think those were two really great channels. But what if someone's just getting started and they have an idea and want to do something, maybe don't have a lot of tools available? Tips for just getting started with creating a video, right? And editing that down. I want to start with you, Scott, because you're kind of the video guy in this group.
Again, obviously, you can get video done relatively inexpensively. So, I mean, it's something that, we can shoot video, we can edit video. But a lot of people at this point are doing simple things like, shooting it on your iPhone and editing with iMovie, or, whatever the case may be, to just, again, I think it also, when you do that for these, kind of staff events that you share, and as Liv said, you get a lot of engagement on those from residents, and prospects see that, and it builds that sense of community. But to some degree, those are actually a little better if they're not polished, because they look like it's real people having fun, and you're shooting it and you're sharing it in a timely fashion, as opposed to what you may want to put on your website. And we're sending a pro out to to do the videography, and we're spending a lot of time with professional editors and voiceover, whatever may be the case. And so I don't have any tips beyond that, other than I think most people have that ability to at least shoot those kinds of casual things that you can put on social media, and I encourage you to do that, because it does show people what you're all about. It shows your personality. And I think that's one of the key things, is people are looking for what's the personality, what's the vibe. If I'm going to go to this community, is it going to, fit my personality? Am I going to fit in? Is it a place that I want to spend my time? So
100%. I second, super cosign on the phone, right? And on iMovie, that's something actually we use quite a bit as well. Most phones, and it's not just iPhones, actually Google, the Pixel's a really great camera in that one as well. Most modern smartphones are pretty good at shooting video at this point. High definition 4K video. Big thing on there's lighting, right? I know one trick that we use a lot is either literally go outside where the sun's at, and it'll make you look 20 times better, right? It'll be clear, it'll be crisper, your skin will look great, right? Or another one that we use from time to time is we'll shoot in front of a window. So not with the window behind us, but literally put the phone and like, I'll prop the phone up on the windowsill with the window behind it facing me. Great natural sunlight coming in. You got a built-in tripod right there, and just hit the button and talk. And iMovie is great at being able to cut out all the flubs, but not too much. Like, leave it natural. Like you said, it should be casual. It should be showing personality. So just kind of lean into that. So, Liv, social media.
Social media.
You mentioned Instagram. I love that, and I love the idea of using TikTok also as kind of a video editing tool almost, but sharing that on something like Instagram, because it is perfect for Instagram stories. Like,
Yeah.
the whole arrangement's perfect for an Instagram story. What are the top 3 channels you're seeing right now from a social perspective?
I would really say mostly for us, it's Facebook and Instagram. So our communities have both. And on the back end, we sync them. So what they, post on one, especially when it comes to the picture and the story behind the picture, like for an Instagram type platform. So we definitely use both. What we are seeing is the engagement varies on the location and kind of the audience of that community. So for example, we find that our urban communities that are, really more in an area where you're dealing with like young professionals, a little bit of a, hip crowd, if you will.
Right.
They tend to be more engaged on Instagram. And then some of our more suburban communities, they tend to be more engaged on Facebook, right? And so we want to make sure that we're doing both. And we see e-commerce taking off in social media channels. I mean, I've purchased probably way too many things off ads that have been served to me on Instagram and Facebook. So, we haven't really quite seen that yet on TikTok. So our kind of communication to our on-site teams for TikTok use is, kind of, Scott, what you said, it's more like to humanize our brand, right? And to have a little fun. And when they can't meet us face to face right now, just to see, who we are and who that community is and their personality. So Facebook allows us to post more content, right? So we can, share links and, share stories. We can have residents, like we will do like, pet of the month, showcase your pet, and they take pictures of their pets. Or we'll, we've seen some communities do like, selfie, and, and then we see our residents take selfies. We've seen communities, say, tell us, things about you that most people wouldn't know, and they participate. And obviously the comments and the pictures is something that the Facebook platform allows. So we feel like we can do more content on Facebook, but then Instagram has like the great Instagram stories. So we've been doing a lot of like food trucks. So having food trucks come to the community. So, just to provide something different and new. And our team loves to go out there and take, video and put that on the Instagram story. Or they'll say, for next month's food truck, what do you want? Tacos or burgers? And the voting, the engagement buttons that are available through Instagram have been, beneficial for us. So
that's awesome.
I can't say that one is definitely greater than the other. I think they both work in their unique way. And for us, it's important to have a presence in both.
Yeah, I love the idea of like starting to get ready with some of the TikTok stuff. You're right, a lot of it has to be brand right now, but all the indications from them is that they really want to move more into that like advertising engagement mode that you see right now on like a Facebook, for example. So great idea to kind of get ahead of that now.
Sure.
versus waiting. You mentioned about kind of some of the social content and also some of the personas that you're dealing with, right? With either the younger, hipper crowd, it's kind of the suburban crowd, a little bit of all that. One of the big, I think, potential pitfall areas or sticky areas about social media has been that there've been a lot of social causes and a lot of we're living online now. So all the good is there and also all the bad is there. And a lot of people that are very anxious from being stuck indoors for the past 5 months, right? and we're all super deep in our feelings right now. And it can be important to like really show some of the personality. And I know Bainbridge, you guys have leaned into some of those things, but how are you navigating that like line between keeping people engaged, but and showing your values in a way that's going to be, you know, beneficial to the organization while still balancing to make sure you're not like sticking in or stepping in quicksand here or there? What does that look like? Now, let me not have an easy answer, right? Because I think it's for any marketer right now, but curious about how you're approaching it from your perspective as an individual.
Well, I think that, again, it's just like the variety of content that you post. We try to focus on how can we best showcase us as an individual community, and you know, obviously how we represent the Bainbridge brand in general. And we try to just really stay in our lane, right? We want
Yeah.
to, from a prospecting tool, we want to show you what we feel makes living in a Bainbridge community the way to go, right? Our apartment homes, our amenities, and then we also want to showcase the level of customer service that we have and the fun that we have in the community feeling, and that's what we focus on, and that's the lane that we stay on. And then from our residents, again, just sharing relevant information that is important to navigate during this, you know, tough time. We want to be useful, we want to be helpful, and that's, we're just trying to stay in that lane, because you're right, there's, you know, we know what our core beliefs are as an organization, but we want to be sensitive to everybody, and so we definitely try to identify our messaging, be strategic, and stay in our lane. Because I also feel that there's, you know, sometimes you get messaging from organizations that it just doesn't make sense, right? And
Right,
you're like, oh,
exactly.
why is this? So we are just trying to meet our audience and communicate in a way that's engaging, beneficial, and informative.
Very well said. Very well said. Thanks for that one. We're going to switch a little bit gears here in the last bit of time we have. And we have both questions that are in the chat related to this right now. I have a screen over there. That's why I'm pointing. Both in the chat right now. And then also in kind of the things we want to tackle about, we're going to go into kind of ROI and key metrics, right? So, you know, regardless of what you're doing, it all comes back to what is the value you're getting out of it from the organization, for the programs that you're running, for the, you know, properties that you're managing, business that you're in, et cetera, et cetera. Let's start with kind of a question. And you touched on a little bit of some of these metric pieces a minute ago, Scott. So we're going to start with you on here. Curious about looking at data differently since you entered the pandemic. We've had some chats previously. I think the consensus across most of them have been the ABCs of your metrics have all stayed the same, right? It is, we know what we needed to, the needles we needed to move, but maybe some of the supporting metrics behind those have shifted in priority to meet those ultimate goals, right? Some have risen up that were maybe even tertiary goals before. Some have, you know, fallen backwards because, for example, maybe you're not looking at the number of on-site visits because you kind of can't have them sometimes, right? But what have you seen, and also a little bit around velocity has been a kind of a consistent message from chats as well. How are you, from a video perspective, in all these different deployments of it, looking at data differently since you entered the pandemic versus before?
Yeah, and again, I just want to make the distinction that, you know, virtual tour versus video. I mean, because virtual tour is what I'm primarily talking about when I'm looking at the stats that we're using. And so, you know, certainly there's been a very big increase in search engine optimization because people know that they're going to start, you know, their search at Google. And, you know, so we get a lot of questions surrounding that. And luckily our tours, whether they're placed on the individual website or on Facebook, wherever they are, they actually feed into your Google SEO juice. And so that's been one of the things that clients have been most interested is what can I do to move myself up on Google? And so we feed into that Google business listing. The other thing I've seen is because we have the analytics on the tours, we can see what people view. And so people can then rearrange and also change their marketing message. So we've seen this huge leap in virtual tour viewership interaction. And so that, again, it was high before, something like 30% higher conversion when you have virtual tours. That has just gone through the roof with the pandemic. But what we're seeing is that people are now looking at the individual scenes in your tour, and they're basing some of their photography on their website and their stills and things that they're sending out, because more people are interested in the rooftop bar, because that is one of the most viewed scenes on their particular virtual tour, which may make sense because of that sense of community and people are kind of locked indoors and that type of thing. And so those are the areas where I've probably seen the biggest changes, is more questions around organic search and how does this feed into our organic positioning. And then the other one that I mentioned earlier is the mirrored tours. Virtual tours originally, they were great to put on your website. And I think people thought, well, that's great. And maybe top of the funnel. And maybe when they get further down the funnel, they're going to come do an on-site visit. And as you said, since that has gone away, suddenly everybody is now monitoring how many guided virtual tours that their people are doing, so that they can look and see, are you using this great tool that we have? Because we built a virtual tour, you have the ability to walk somebody through it and give them all your talking points that you are so good at as the on-site person. So we want to make sure you're using it. So I've seen a huge increase in the people asking about that, and also visiting those analytics behind the scenes to see, who on site is using it. This location may be using it, somebody else is not. They can go to them. Maybe they're not trained. Maybe it's a new person. So, those are the probably the key things that I've seen the most buzz around since the pandemic.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm going to ask a slightly different question for you, Liv. So we've got a version of this actually from both Heidi and your sister. So I'm just going to flat out ask your sister's question. So I'm gonna ask verbatim from your sister, and then Heidi, there's a piece of yours we're actually going to touch on a little bit in a follow-up question as we wrap up here. So, Liv, what are some KPIs that you are monitoring during the pandemic, and which ones will you continue to monitor moving forward?
We have adjusted the KPIs based on the specific tool. So, before it was like, what's your cost per lead? What's your cost per lease? But we understand that not all of our marketing channels or our marketing initiatives are meant to give a cost per lead or a cost per lease. So I'll give you an example. For social media, we aren't measuring a cost per lead or lease there. And our KPI there is ensuring that our teams are being active on social media. So we have certain goals for our stabilized communities, and we have certain goals for our lease ups. And so that's what we're measuring. And to be quite honest, we're probably going to continue to measure post-pandemic. When we look at the search engine optimization, strategies that we're doing, whether it's with increasing our Google My Business listings, whether it's focusing on listing distribution in general, then at that point, we're looking at just traffic to the website. When we look at whether we're doing display or whether we're doing PPC campaigns, then at that point, obviously traffic is important, but our main KPI there is goal conversion. And Bainbridge is really lucky. We work with a pretty phenomenal firm for PPC and display, and they're a partner, so we're able to see through our Google Analytics dashboard like how each specific keyword is performing, and they are very flexible with us where we can make easy adjustments. So these are things that, like I said, it brought multifamily like to the forefront of digital marketing, and understand, that digital like leasing sight unseen through, digital means is, I think, what's not just occurred through the pandemic, but is here to stay. So we will continue to monitor those KPIs, but also being flexible. Technology is constantly changing, consumer demand is constantly changing, consumer behavior is constantly changing. So having the flexibility to shift and reevaluate, what we're doing and how we're measuring success.
Got it. Thanks for hearing a lot about kind of just leading indicators in a lot of areas that lead to those final outcomes that we want as far as the leases. All right, so I got a couple of wrap up questions. And for the first one, actually, Lauren, if you can pop up poll question number 4. We're going to talk about marketing tools, right? Because there's a lot of them out there. We talked about that earlier, the tech stack. And Scott, we're going to start with you. Obviously, LCP 360, we're partners. We love you. You have an amazing product. I'd love to hear from you one new marketing tool outside of yours that has emerged as a rock star this year that just caught your attention.
Yep. You just had to say other than ours, didn't you?
I got you here. You already have it. You're good.
Well, honestly, I would have to say, not that this is a cheesy answer, but I would have to say our partnerships like PERQ, because there are areas that obviously you guys do well and you integrate with us. And so to me, the rock star is going to be the integration, because I don't think that for a long time, as you said, people were adding individual tools, and that's great. But as the end user, I want a seamless experience, and I want to be able to go from the top all the way down to a signed lease. And I want it to be an easy process. I don't want to have to be jumping around to different systems. I want everything to be integrated. And so, not to plug PERQ shamelessly, but, the fact that you can, integrate some of the PERQ tools and schedule a virtual tour, and that you can, proceed through that integration seamlessly, is what I believe is going to emerge as the winning strategy. So I don't know that it's one tool. I think it's the integration strategy, so that there's a seamless, process from start to finish, because I think that's what end users are going to expect. We've seen it in other industries. Sometimes multifamily can be a little slower adopting, and I think this just kicked that into high gear.
That is integrations. That is an excellent answer. I love that. And I agree with you. How about you, Liv? You're seeing a lot of stuff out there, right? I'm sure a lot of people even come to you trying to pitch things, right? What has emerged for you this year is just a rock star thing that you're surprised about?
Yeah, so, obviously, to piggyback off Scott, integration is important for us, but also the ease of use, not only for our on-site teams who are dealing with the day-to-day of the technology that we put in place, but also from the user experience for the consumer. So that's something that's important to us. I'll give you 2 answers.
Okay.
The first one is kind of like the free one. For us, Google My Business has been huge. And I think that it's just, prior to me coming on board to Bainbridge, the very smart marketers that I have the pleasure of working with every day had been already executing this initiative to really beef up the Google My Business listings and make it a mini ad with call to actions and everything. So that has helped us from an SEO perspective. It's one of our top sources of traffic. So that's something that has been just huge for us, and I think will continue to grow. And then the other thing that is something that we pay for, is the tour scheduling capabilities on our website. So we obviously have tour scheduling through PERQ. We also have tour scheduling through our friends at Hiley, but the ability for somebody to be able to schedule, for some of our communities, we're doing in-person tours by, appointments, for them to schedule a virtual tour where, we will showcase the community virtually, or to do self-guided tour. We've implemented self-guided tours also in our communities. So that has been a huge benefit for us, and the ability to give consumers what they want in the way that they feel most comfortable with.
That's awesome. Awesome. And thanks for the twofer. I wouldn't expect anything less from you.
Yeah, and Liv, I want to thank you for mentioning the Google My Business listing, since I was not allowed to promote my own product in that segment. So,
Okay.
yeah, I appreciate that. I did not pay her for that, but I will take it.
You have represented yourself very well today, Scott. Thanks for that. So we have the results back are really interesting here for sure. We allowed the multiple choice on this one, and we have 63% of the people saying that when they're looking at tools, basically everything on the list is important as evaluation, points. If there's one that sticks out above the others and just barely, it is the easy to use and functionality, which also I think speaks a little bit back to that integration piece as well that everyone's been mentioning. So that's been awesome. I think that's the consensus today, right? Integrations, use video, use virtual touring, right? Lean into those, and from a data perspective, really look at maybe some of those supporting or leading indicators that maybe you didn't pay a lot of attention to before, as a way to really set your team up for success for those final outcomes, which likely have not changed. We still want people in, and we still want folks to stay. So thank you both very much for hanging out with me today. I really, really appreciate it. And I'll let Lauren come back.
Okay.
Hi guys, Liv, Scott, thank you so much for hanging out with us today and providing all that great information you did. For those of you on here, you guys will be receiving an email from, I think it's coming from Mohammed or myself, but be on the lookout for that. It will contain this full recap video, as well as a blog post highlighting some key points from this webinar, like Google My Business, how to use TikTok, stuff like that. So please be on the lookout for that. It should come to your inboxes either tomorrow afternoon or Monday morning. But again, thank you so much for spending your lunch or morning with us. It's greatly appreciated, and we hope to see you guys on our next Lunch and Learn.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.